Thank you. Thank you. Moon will join later, so I'll start just talking about my beginnings. I was born with an unusual visual condition called achromatism, which means that I don't see colors. I'm completely colorblind, so I've never seen blue, yellow, pink. There's one in every 33,000 people in the world that don't see colors, that see in grayscale. I'm one of them. So as a child, I tried to ignore the existence of color, but it was impossible for me to ignore that color exists, because people who see color keep mentioning color every single day in daily elements that usually have nothing to do with the beauty of color, like yellow pages, Bluetooth, the Red Cross, Blue Tack, Pink Panther, Yellow Submarine, James Brown, it's in his last name, or Greenland. So I kept hearing the names of color every single day. So it was impossible to ignore the existence of color. Also, when color is used as a code, it can be confusing. Sometimes hot water and cold water is only expressed through color. Also, maps sometimes only use color codes. This is fine, but if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost, because some maps only use color codes. Also, when I was trying to memorize the colors of flags, I had this situation. So France, Ireland, and Italy share exactly the same flag. And when I was talking to people, if someone would ask me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink? I would have no idea, because the only information I get here is that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked, basically. So the reason why I wanted to sense color is because it's a social element. I didn't want to change my sight. Seeing in grayscale has many advantages. I have better night vision. People who see in grayscale, we also can memorize shapes more easily, because color doesn't distract us from shape. And also photocopies are cheaper in black and white. So this is also an advantage. So I didn't want to change my sight, but I wanted to have a sense of color. So when I studied what color was, I realized there's a theory by Isaac Newton that relates each color of the rainbow to a musical note. Isaac Newton was right. Color and sound have something in common. They're both frequencies. Sound is an audio frequency, and color is a visual frequency. So they both vibrate. But Isaac Newton had no technology back then to calculate or to detect the vibration of color. Now, technology exists that allows us to know that red, for example, vibrates at 420 millions of waves per second. So if we could hear the vibration of red, we would hear a note between F and F sharp. So 16 years ago, I started a project to create a system that would allow me to hear the vibrations of color. The first prototype was a webcam connected to a 5-kilo computer and a pair of headphones, and then I memorized the sound of each color. So if we could hear color, this is how we would hear it. This is now, you'll hear the sound of red, and now it's going up to orange. So color is very microtonal. So I slowly memorized the sound of color, and then if I had blue in front, I would hear a note, and then red, a different note, and I memorized the sounds of color. When I was able to sense all the visual spectrum, I didn't see why I should stop there. There's many more colors that exist that the human eye cannot sense, like infrareds and ultraviolets. So I decided to include infrareds and ultraviolets in the system. So sensing infrared, for example, allows me to know if there's movement detectors in a room. So these are usually used to activate alarms. So I can go to a shop or a bank and tell if the alarms are on or off, and in many cases they are off. So it's interesting to know that some of these infrared detectors are actually fake or not working. And ultraviolet perception allows me to know if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. So if I sense there's a high level of ultraviolet, I avoid the sun or I put some sun cream. So my aim is to continuously extend my color perception. But when I did this project, I didn't want to use technology or wear technology. I wanted to become technology. So I thought that the best way of sensing color would be to have a new body part. So I looked at nature and I saw that there's many species that have organs that we don't have. There's many insects that have antennas, and we humans don't have antennas. So I thought that the best way for me to sense color would be to create an antenna and have an antenna implanted in my head that would allow me to receive the vibrations of color and receive them directly inside my head. So we designed an antenna that allowed me to receive the vibrations of color and send the vibrations inside the skull. But then I had to find a doctor willing to implant the antenna in my head. So I went to the doctor and I said I wanted to have an antenna implanted in my head. And he said, sorry, we don't do this here. We don't do antenna implants. If you want to have an antenna implanted, you'll have to convince a bioethical committee. So I presented the antenna surgery to a bioethical committee, and they said it was not ethical to have this antenna implanted in my head for 3 reasons. One, because it's not a pre-existing body part. They would find it ethical if it was a leg or an arm. Second, because it's not a pre-existing sense. If it was not sensing infrared and ultraviolet, they would find it ethical. And the third reason, we were very worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they said no to the surgery, but they allowed me to find a doctor willing to do the surgery. And we did the surgery in Barcelona. So this is my head facing down. And then the head was drilled. So then I would have 4 implants in my head. So 2 is to hold the structure of the antenna. The third implant is this chip that vibrates depending on the color in front of me. And then after some time, we added the 4th implant, which is internet connection, so I can also receive colors from other parts of the world. So the antenna and my head took 2 months to merge, and now the antenna is part of my body. So I'm also officially taller now because the antenna makes me a bit higher. This is my brain. The software and the brain have created a new sense. I feel no difference between the software and the brain anymore. That's why I identify myself as a cyborg. Cyborg means cybernetic organism. It basically means that you feel that you are not using or wearing technology. You feel that you are technology. And that's what I tried to explain to the UK government in 2004, because I had to renew my passport, and they said there was a problem with the photo. They said that there's a law that says electronic equipment cannot appear in passport photos. I replied saying that this is not an electronic equipment, but a new body part. I told them that I'm not wearing an antenna. I have an antenna in the same way that I'm not wearing a nose. I have a nose, and that it should be considered a body part. In the end, they replied after some months, yes, and they allowed me to appear in the passport in 2004 with the antenna. So this helps me travel freely. In airports, there's usually lots of problems with technology, so this passport helps me travel freely. I'm now in conversations with the Swedish government because the materials that I used to create the antenna are Swedish. So I'm telling them that I am Swedish because part of my body is Swedish. So I think I should be allowed to become a Swedish citizen. But they still haven't replied, so hopefully they will. So when I added a new sense, my life changed in many ways. Before I used to dress in a way that it looked good. Now I can dress in a way that it sounds good because I can hear different colors. So I can dress in C major, in A minor, or I can dress as a song. I can wear songs. Or if I go black like today, I'm completely silent. So sometimes I can also be completely silent. Also, the secondary effect is that when I listen to music, each note that I hear, I relate to a different color. So now I can paint what I hear. This is Mozart's Queen of the Night, note by note. So when I look at this painting, I can actually hear music, and I can hear Mozart's Queen of the Night. And this is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber, which looks very different. Also, when we speak, we use frequencies that can be transposed into color. This is Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, transposed into color. And a different change is also the way I sense food. When I look at food, I can compose music with food. So I really enjoy composing with salads, because salads have many different colors. So depending on how I put the vegetables on the plate, I can actually compose a song or eat a song. So this experience, I wanted it to transpose it to other people. So we created a plate that allows you to hear the sound of the food. So I collaborated with a chef, and we created the chromophone. So it's basically a dish. You place the food on the plate, and then when you rotate the plate, the chip inside allows you to hear the sound of the food. So you can go to this restaurant and ask for some music and eat songs like Lady Gaga dessert or whatever you feel like eating. So a different huge change is also the way I sense people's faces, because when I look at someone's face, I hear the colors of someone's face. So I really enjoy creating sound portraits where I get close to the face, I write down the sound of the eyes, the sound of the lips, the skin, the hair, and then I send them an MP3 of their face so they can listen to themselves. One of the first sound portraits I did was of Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him. We all sound different. Pamela Anderson has a very pure C-sharp eyes. Marina Abramovic has very low frequency, so her face vibrates. Macaulay Culkin sounds C major, so it's unusual to find someone that sounds in a major chord. Philip Glass sounds extremely microtonal, like his music. Robert De Niro has a melody in his lips because he has different shades of red, so he has a small melody in his lips. James Cameron has a very high-pitched sound in his nose. Steve Wozniak has very pure eyes in A. They sound like a tuning fork. And Bono had very loud glasses here because he has a shade of pink. What really shocked me is that through all these years that I've been listening to faces is that people who say they're black, they're not black. And people who say they're white, they're not white. People who say they're black, they're actually very, very dark orange. And people who say they're white, they're actually very, very light orange. So the fact that people say that humans are black and white is completely false. We are all orange. So this is an example of how a face sounds. Now we're hearing the sound of the eyes. So I can also create rhythms with people's faces, and I call these face concerts. I usually do it with an audience, so the audience gets on stage, and then I start creating music, and I amplify the sounds from my head to the audience, and then the music comes from the colors of the people's faces. So if the concert sounds really bad, it's not my fault, it's the audience's fault, because the music comes from their faces. The last face concert I did was of Prince Albert II of Monaco, and I've been told that he likes the sound of his face so much that he's using it as his ringtone. So whenever... So while this project has been part of my life for the last 15 years, I've been walking around the streets since 2004 with an antenna in my head. I usually wear a cap so that people stare at it less, but I've had all sorts of reactions. In 2004, most people thought it was a reading light, so they would ask me if I could turn on the light. In 2005, people thought it was a flexible microphone. In 2007, people thought it was a hands-free telephone, so they thought I was on the phone. In 2009, many people thought it was a GoPro cam, that I was filming my life. So people would wave at me thinking that I was filming them. In 2012, 13, many people thought I had something to do with Google Street View and that I was streaming the streets. In 2015, children asked me if this was some kind of selfie stick attached to my head. And in 2016, many people shouted at me, Pokemon, and they tried to catch me. So social reaction keeps changing. Hopefully in the 2020s, we'll just think it's a new sensory organ, and we'll see many more people with new organs and senses. Ribas, who will be performing in a moment, has been exploring new senses since 2007. First, she had 2 earrings that allowed her to feel the movement in front of her, so this gave her the sense of speed. These earrings would vibrate whenever there was presence in front, so depending on the interval, she could feel the exact speed of any moving object. By turning them around, she could also have retroception, so she was able to feel if there was presence behind her. And for many years, she's had 2 implants in her feet that allowed her to feel the seismic activity of the world. So whenever there was an earthquake in the world, her feet would vibrate. So her feet were connected to online seismographs. She also had internet connection in her feet that allowed her to connect to the seismograph on the moon. So she could also feel moonquakes. So in the 20th century, we saw how humans went to space. And in the 21st century, we'll start seeing how space enters our bodies. It's a new way of exploring space. We don't need to physically go to space in order to explore it. We can actually send our senses to space or connect our body to space and explore it by having senses exclusively in space. I also use my internet connection to connect to NASA's International Space Station. And when I do this, my sense of color is no longer here, but in space. So connecting to NASA's International Space Station allows me to explore the colors of space and become a senstronaut. So we call it, to become senstronaut is to have senses in space. So Moon and I created the Cyborg Foundation 9 years ago, and we've been helping other people become cyborgs. Manel de Aguas has an organ that allows him to sense the weather. So he has a very precise feeling of the weather that is happening around him, so he can also predict if it's going to rain or not. Joe Dagney has implants that allow him to have echolocation, so he can feel presence 360 degrees around him. We also created the tooth with a light. I had the tooth missing, so we created the light so that in case of total darkness, I could click, and then I would have emergency light in my mouth. But the problem is that when I was eating, the light was going on and off all the time, so I had it removed. But we're trying to find a system that will work. We also created magnetic hair. It's hair that can be implanted, and if you get close to a magnetic object, your hair will stick to the object, so it allows you to have magnetoception. This is a project by Alex. He's been developing a sense that allows him to feel the quality of the air, so when he walks around the streets, he can feel if the quality of the air is dropping or not. This is a project Moon and I did in Brazil. A tooth was placed in Moon's mouth, and another tooth was implanted in my mouth, and whenever Moon clicked, I would receive a vibration in my mouth, and whenever I clicked, she would receive a vibration in her mouth. We both learned the Morse code, so depending on the rhythm, we could actually communicate from mouth to mouth. We call it the transdental communication system, and it actually works through Bluetooth. So it's a Bluetooth tooth that allows you to communicate from mouth to mouth. This is Pau Prats, who's developing ultraviolet perception. So it's a skin that allows him to feel the levels of ultraviolet. And this is another implant that Moon and I have in our feet, in our knee, that allows us to feel the magnetic north. So many animals can sense where the north is. So this is a very simple compass that can be implanted, and it allows you to feel where the north is. And this is Kai, who's developing the sense of cosmic rays. So he wants to feel cosmic rays. He's presenting it tomorrow at Princeton University. He has it here now and in his ears, and whenever there's a cosmic ray, he feels the vibration of the cosmic ray. And this is a sense that I'll have placed in my head in the next month, which is an organ for the sense of time. It will be a point of heat that will take 24 hours to do the complete circle around my head. So I will feel the rotation of the Earth around my head. So if I feel the heat here, it means it's 12 o'clock solar time in London. Here's it's in Iceland, here in the Atlantic. So I will feel time. And the aim is to see whether or not in the future I can create time illusions. If I want the situation to last longer, I'll make the point of heat go a bit slower. Or if I want time to go faster, I'll make it go faster. So the aim is to take Albert Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice and see whether or not we can create time illusions. And just to end, this is cyborg art. We call it cyborg art, the art of creating new senses, new organs, and designing our perception of reality. It's different from AI. If the antenna was telling me the names of colors, that would be AI. But the antenna is not telling me the names of color. It's not giving me intelligence. The antenna is allowing me to sense the vibrations of color, and then it's my brain that creates or not the intelligence. And it's not virtual reality or augmented reality. We call it revealed reality. Technology is allowing us to reveal elements that already exist. Now in this room, there's many things that we can't sense, but if we merge with technology, we can reveal them, and suddenly we might be able to sense elements, natural elements that are in this room, but that none of us can sense. Just to end, I think it's ethical to design ourselves. We've been a species that for many years have been changing the planet and designing the planet. And I think this is wrong. We should be changing ourselves and designing ourselves. If we all had night vision, for example, all these lights would be off. We wouldn't be spending so much energy creating artificial light in order to see when it's dark. We would be able to see each other. So all the lights in Kuwait would be off at night. We wouldn't be spending all this energy if we had night vision. So it would be much better for the planet. If we could control our own temperature, we wouldn't use heaters or air conditionings. We wouldn't change the temperature of the planet. We would change our own temperature. So I think that in the future, people will see it ethical, that the more we design ourselves, the better it will be for the planet and for ourselves. Thank you very much. So we thought it would be really good to have a short performance by Moon. She's been doing this performance in many museums, contemporary art museums around the world. She usually waits on stage, and whenever she feels an earthquake, she moves. So if there's an earthquake, Moon will dance. If there's no earthquakes during this 4-minute performance, there will be no dance. So this is the first, I guess this is the first cyborg art performance in Kuwait ever. So a round of applause to Moon Ribas.
And what happens after? Thank you very much. I think after this massive Ampe and Yalahwi moments, it's very, very serious what we've seen, and it makes us want to think about how to, whether we should integrate with technology, to what effect is technology integrating with us, but also we can go back and see how we can integrate ourselves back with nature. And this is where Lina comes into perspective. لينا العليمي أحد مؤسسي شركة 3BL ومبادرات Public Planet Partnerships. Sorry? Q&A. Yes, there is a Q&A. Q&A to the public. I know we have many questions. First question. Over there. Microphone. Oh, sorry, over here.
Hi.
No,
My first question is for Neil. What are the downsides of having that technology integrated in you? And I don't mean the perception of people. I mean, how does it affect you in your day-to-day life? Like, how does it affect the quality of your life? Not the good way, but the bad way. Like, what are the negative sides of this?
The negative, I think, social reaction. That's basically the bad thing, is that it's in the case of an antenna, it's very visible. So I have to interact with people every day, every day since 2004. So that's, I guess, something that it can be tiring. But otherwise, there are risks when you have something implanted. You can have body rejection, so your body might reject the material. So then you have to find a different type of material, or you might have brain rejection, so your brain might not accept the new sensory input. So these are the two risks when you have a new sensory organ implanted. In my case, I didn't have any rejection, so I haven't had any problems. Sometimes I have antenna aches in the same way that I have headaches, but they go away with a headache tablet. There are no antenna ache tablets yet, but with a headache tablet it goes away.
Does it not affect your focus that you listen to sounds all around you?
No, when you add a new sense at the beginning, the new sense becomes very dominant. So yes, the first 5 months, the new sense was dominant, so I was focusing only on sensing color, but after some time the brain adjusts and the new sense becomes normalized like any other sense.
My second question is for Moon. You sense these earthquakes, but do you know where they're at?
No? No.
Would you like
voice.
to?
No, when I have to, maybe I have to explain that I had the implants for almost 7 years, but just some months ago I took the implants out, and that's now I'm trying out. Whenever I perform, I have this prototype of a jewelry, but I will create a jewelry that it will be like the seismic sense. And yeah, when I had it, I knew the intensity of the earthquake. There was some seismic sense, but I didn't know exactly where. There was this project to know if the earthquake happened very far from where I am or very close. But at the end, I started to investigate sensing the moonquakes instead of the earth. So I didn't finish.
Thank
that.
you.
Question? Yes, over here. Sorry. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Neil. So I just wanted to tell you, I've kind of learned about you when I was in university. I was studying to be a biomedical engineer. One of the most amazing things that I'd seen was actually a video of yours that was on YouTube about how you'd made and designed this entire implant and had it and completely able to see color through sound. That amazed me at the time. So what I wanted to know was, when you started off, when you were like, great, I'm gonna work on an implant, what was going on with you? Like, what pushed you and motivated you to choose to go ahead and do this? Because it's not something you hear about happening any day. So it's just wondering, what made you?
Well, we both did it in the context of art. So when you are in art schools, they push you to try and do things that have never been done in art, especially if you're doing contemporary art. So The use of technology as a tool had already been used by many artists. So wearing technology had also been used by, so I thought that something new would be to have an organ as to have the art piece, which is this that allows you to hear color, implanted. We see this as our main artworks, the creation of the senses and organs. And
designing your own perception, no? That was...
Yeah, so I guess if you think of it as being in the context of an art school, it makes sense, at least it made sense for us in the art school. When we went out of the art school, we realized that maybe it wasn't so normal to do it. But in the art context, it felt like normal.
Question? Over here. Thank you.
Okay, hi. My question's for Mr. Neil. I just wanted to know if it can get overstimulating sometimes or overwhelming.
Yeah, like walking around a supermarket can be very stimulating because there's many colors in supermarkets, especially the zone with cleaning products. That's the area of a lot of stimulation because there's lots of different colors. Also, fruits and vegetables can be very similar, but it's never, my brain got used to it. At the beginning, it was a bit overstimulating, but I've been hearing colors for 15 years, so it's completely normal. It's just never.
And there's no off button for that.
There's
right?
no off.
Okay.
Like, we have no off for the sense of sight, of hearing. We can block our senses, or we can, so I can block my antenna, but there's no switch, no.
What about what? What about when you dream?
When I drink?
Dream.
Oh, okay.
I also thought it was...
When I dream, yeah, I hear colors in my dreams. Having internet connection also means that I have 5 friends that can send colors to my head. They use their mobile phones and they can stream live images directly into my head. So now I could be in Kuwait, but I could be suddenly receiving colors from sunset in Melbourne. So they can stream images. If they send colors to my head when I'm sleeping, my friends can actually alter my dreams, or they can color my dreams. So if they send yellow when I'm sleeping, lemon might appear in my dream, or my dream might just become yellow. So color has been introduced in my dreams through the antenna, yes.
And last question. Thank you.
Sorry. It might be a shocking question. Did you give yourself for any studies to see how this affects more for controlling dreams?
Controlling dreams?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, this allows me to alter the dreams, but to control them, you mean like well, you could, I guess, if you sent me the colors of the face of Prince Charles, for example, Prince Charles would probably appear in my dream. So
Or
you could do that, yes. You could.
Just to be specific, I mean, you can actually see what people send you in your dreams.
Yes, because I've been hearing colors for so long that I know, the color combinations are usually quite unique. But you can do it with other senses. If you're sleeping and someone starts cooking hot chocolate, you might start dreaming that you're eating hot chocolate in your dream. So it doesn't only happen with the sense of color. You can actually modify the dreams of someone if you start playing something, and the sound of a drum might appear in your dream as well. So, but yeah, with color you can maybe be more specific. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, seems one last question.
Hi there, thank you for your talk and performance. I just wanted to point out how interesting it was for you to speak about the language of the cyborg, like through Morse and through sound and through color. So how does that correlate with like the future of communication within everyday life and for the normal like living human?
Well, I think each sense creates its own culture. So when you add a new sense in society, new culture appears, and then new forms of language appear as well. So we will communicate in different ways for sure in the future. And also we can communicate through senses that are exclusively created for communication, like the Morse code from tooth to tooth. It can seem like a game, but this can allow us to communicate in space because there's no air conduction in space, so that's a form of communication that would work. It can also work if someone is completely paralyzed and cannot speak but can move its teeth. So if the person learns to learn Morse code, he could communicate with us through Morse code by having the Morse code translated into spoken voice, for example. So we see it as art, but all these art creations can be applied in society in many, many different ways.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
sharing
for
your
inviting
stories
us.
with us.